Good evening. My name is Lam Hira. I serve as the Dean of the College of Business at Iowa State University. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first lecture in Greater Iowa Credit Union Business Lecture Series. Thanks to Greater Iowa Credit Union for funding this lecture. We are happy to have members of their team at the front row this morning and some in the audience as well. Thank you also to the University Lecture Series for arranging this lecture. And let me now introduce our tonight's speaker. So you are here. That's the reason you are here today. Jeffrey Ma is a strategy expert and a member of the MIT Blackjack team that inspired Film 21. As a member of the team, Mr. Ma created an ingenious method for counting cards, using talent, creativity, math, and teamwork to win millions of dollars in Las Vegas. He and his team eventually became the basis for the best-selling book Bringing Down the House and the hit film. Jeffrey is a co-founder of Citizen Sports, a revolutionary sports media company. He's a widely sought-after speaker for his insight and ability to show organizations how to empower them and their members to help them make better business decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jeffrey Ma as the inaugural speaker of the Greater Iowa Credit Union Business Lecture Series. After Jeffrey talks, we'll have an opportunity for question and answer. And also after that, there's a reception in that room next door, and also for autographing his books, and if you want to buy the books. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So how many of you guys have seen 21? This is going to be hard. There's like this tremendous spotlight on me. I feel like I'm being interrogated. Like, where was I last night? I swear I was in bed doing nothing. So for those of you guys who've seen 21, you know what I like to call the greatest bit of Hollywood magic. True Hollywood magic is how you turn an average-looking Asian-American male into a dashing British white guy. Because that's what they did. Jim Sturgis plays me in the movie 21. I am the real-life inspiration for the book Bringing Down the House and the movie 21. It all kind of started in 2001. I approached a friend of mine by the name of Ben Mesrick, and he was a writer. He'd written about 6 books at that point, but to be honest, his career was not doing very well, and he had business school applications out and was thinking about not being a writer anymore. And I said, hey, I got a really good story for you for your next book. And he said, well what is it? And I said, well, it's me and my MIT buddies, we go to Vegas and we win lots of money. And he said, oh, I don't know if I really want to write a book about a bunch of MIT nerds. So I said, well, come with me to Vegas and see what you think. And so he came with me to Vegas, and we went out, and he was like, God, this is so cool. I want to write a book about this. So we went and we approached his publisher, and we said, hey, we got this idea for a book. What do you think? And she said, I don't know if anyone's going to really want to read a book about a bunch of MIT nerds. So we didn't listen to her, and we decided to write the book. And I guess they were both wrong because the book was a New York Times bestseller for over a year. Kevin Spacey read the book and loved it so much that he turned it into a movie called 21, which it seems like a lot of you guys have seen. And Ben Mesrick's career completely transformed. He actually wrote his most recent book is called The Accidental Billionaires. It was changed into a movie called The Social Network, which I'm sure many of you guys have seen. And I, to this day, think I made Ben Mesrick who he is today. So good for me. But for those of you guys who haven't and who have seen 21, I always like to start with a story or two that weren't in the book and were in the movie. And the actual first one comes from the opening night of the Bellagio. So opening night of any casino. So now if I walk, you guys can't see, can you? So what if I walk on the floor? Can you guys see me better there? No? What's that? We'll try it then. Because I have to walk, otherwise is this okay? Okay. So, because this is what you want to see. You don't need to see me. It's fine. Anyways, the opening night of a casino, there's always 3 types of people there. Okay, for us, card counters, they're like our emerging markets. Okay, when you open a new casino, the last thing you're worried about is card counters. You're worried about making sure you pay people correctly or making sure the cocktail waitresses are serving alcohol to everyone. So we, as card counters, would always go hit these new casinos when they open. And then celebrities always want to be there because they want to see and be seen at these big events. Can anyone guess the third type of person that's usually at the opening of a casino? Just yell it out. You can tell a lot about a crowd by how quickly they get this answer. I was at a real estate conference in Orange County, California, and no sooner had the words come out of my mouth than a woman from the back row screams, "Hookers!" And so I do a lot of corporate speaking, and oftentimes when I tell this story in a corporate audience, there's always one guy in the audience that can't control himself, and he'll yell out prostitutes or hookers or whatever it is. And I always make him stand up in the middle of the room so everyone can see who said it. And then he realizes that at that moment it might have been a career-limiting maneuver. So anyways, I'm here playing blackjack at the Bellagio, opening the Bellagio, with my fellow card counters, the prostitutes rolling around, and the celebrities. And I have the pleasure of playing blackjack with Kevin Costner. Okay, everyone here, I'm sure, knows Kevin Costner. Sit down with Kevin Costner, pretty good blackjack player, meaning he's doing the right thing most of the time. But then he starts to lose. And every hand he loses, his friends, he has this whole posse of friends around him, his friends look at me and they say, "God, this is like Waterworld all over again." So my second favorite story actually comes from the NBA lockout. About 7 years ago, actually almost about 15 years ago now, I guess, the NBA decided to lock out their players, as effectively creating a strike, a work stoppage. And where do you think NBA players go when they can't play basketball? Well, they go play blackjack in casinos. So I had the pleasure of playing blackjack with a bunch of the New York Knicks. And I played with Patrick Ewing and Allen Houston. All these guys are retired now. But at that time, they were considered really cool. So I sat down with John Starks, and it was a very interesting experience. Because first of all, John Starks at that time was supposed to be this gritty kid from the streets. And the first thing he did was order a bottle of Merlot, which I thought was a very odd thing for an NBA player to be drinking. But I've since learned that you never really know what an NBA player is going to drink, because I had the pleasure of playing craps about 4 years ago with Jalen Rose. You guys all know Jalen Rose, 6'9", really athletic guy, played for about 45 different teams in the NBA. Jalen and I were playing craps together, and Jalen was breaking into sports media at that point, and I was already in sports media, so he was kind of trying to kiss up to me a little bit. And he said, "Hey, Jeff, let's get a drink together." I said, "Okay, Jalen, what do you want to drink?" He said, "Whatever you want to drink." And I said, "I don't know." And like my one data point, because I'm a data-driven guy, is that John Starks drinks Merlot. So I'm like, I'm not going to order Merlot in the casino with Jalen Rose. So I turned to the waitress and I "Give us 2 glasses of Cavassier." I don't even know what Cavassier is, but I just had rap videos going through my head. So Jalen Rose starts to walk, so the waitress starts to walk away, and Jalen Rose with his long arms grabs her and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, could you make mine an apple martini?" So you never really know. Anyways, back to John Starks. So John Starks and I are sitting and we're playing blackjack, and John goes through this transformation that I'm sure many of you guys, well, no one underage has ever done, but some of you guys have seen your friends go through, which is you start as this normal human being, and then after a few hours become this drunk, degenerate gambler. And poor John started losing, and he lost basically his shirt. And he pulls out his last $500 chip, puts it down on the betting circle, and the dealer gives him an 11, and the dealer has a 5 up. So how many of you guys play blackjack? What do you do then? You have to double down, which means you need to put another $500 down, but poor John doesn't have another $500. So I flip him a $500 chip, and I say, "Pay me back when you win." John puts that $500 down. The dealer gives him a 5 to make 16, and John looks at me and goes, "Man, you just jinxed me." And I said, "Don't worry, John, because here I am, I'm counting cards, and I know there's still a good chance John's going to win, and the dealer's going to bust." I said, "John, I think you're going to win still." The dealer flips a 10 to make 15, and he gets a 10 to make 25, busts. John hands me back my $500 without a word of thank you. And it was at that point that I decided I would never have John Starks on my fantasy basketball team. So that was my way of showing him. Okay, so we all have defining moments in our lives, lessons we've learned. I'm sure for a lot of you guys, maybe that's getting into this college or declaring your major, or some of you guys, I'm sure it's getting married, having kids. Well, 37 and single like I am, mine comes at a blackjack table. So I'm using math to beat the casinos. Everything I do is 100% completely objective. Every decision I make is completely objective. And this math tells me to go up to the table and bet 2 hands of $10,000. So I do. And on the first one, I get 11. On the second one, I get a pair of 9s. And the dealer has a 6 up. Okay, so we just talked about this. 11 against a 6 is a hand you need to double down. Okay, which means I need to put another $10,000 down, and the dealer gives me a 7 to make 18. The 9s, I need to split, which means I put another $10,000 down, and I get to play each 9 separately. So all these decisions I'm making, again, are completely objective. There's nothing subjective about them. This is pure math. I know what to do. I've memorized what to do in all these situations. So the dealer gives me a 2 on the first 9 to make 11. So I have to double down again. So I put another $10,000 down. I get an 8 on that to make 19. And then the last 9, I get a 10 to make 19. And the dealer has a 6 up. So how much money do I have on the table? $50,000. Okay? Dealer flips a 5 to make 11. And then gets a 10 to make 21. So I lose $50,000. This woman behind me shrieks, "Oh my God, that's my entire mortgage!" And I live in San Francisco, so I want to turn around and go, "Where the hell do you live?" Because in San Francisco, you're not buying much for $50,000. But again, here I am, and I'm using math to beat the casinos. Like, every decision I make is completely objective. And there's no time for being emotional or reacting to what just happened. So now I know I need to bet 3 hands of $10,000. So I do. And I get a 9 on the first one, a 19 on the second, and an ace-4 on the third. Okay? Now, the 9 against the 5 is a double-down hand, again. So I double that down. I put another $10,000. I get a 10 to make 19. The ace-4 is another double-down hand. So I have to put another $10,000 down. I get a 4 on that to make 19. So I've got 19, 19, 19. I've got another $50,000 on the table. Here's my chance to win back everything I just lost or to lose 2 of those women's houses. So it's one of those moments where you say, how did I get here? Okay, well, I graduated from MIT in 1994 with a mechanical engineering degree, of which I've never used any of. So those of you guys who are worried about your major and everything like that, just worry about learning. Don't worry about your major. Don't worry about what to do next. Just worry about learning and learning how to learn. Because that's really what I did. So I graduated from MIT. I didn't go to medical school like you guys all saw in the movie. Instead, went to work in finance. I worked in the Chicago Board of Options Exchange for a couple years. And then the whole internet thing was happening, so I decided to come back to Boston. And I started 3 different internet companies, all of which was lucky enough to sell. The most recent we sold to Yahoo in April. And since then, I've just been kind of touring and promoting my book. But during this whole time, from 94 to 2001, I was a professional blackjack player. And I always like to pay homage to our illustrious ex-vice president, the inventor of the internet. Now we can say Al Gore invented 2 things, one good, one bad, right? He invented the internet, which was good for us, certainly helped us technology-wise, but then he invented global warming, which has been bad for us. So, that joke is just so much better in the U.S. Like, I've been touring, speaking in the Middle East, and I say that joke, and I'm like, is this thing on? No one likes that joke. All right, anyways, so back to being a professional blackjack player. What does that mean? Well, there's 3 questions that people ask me. The first is, isn't that illegal? And actually, it's been tried up to the highest level of the Supreme Court in the United States. It is not illegal. It's 100% legal. Now, casinos don't like you to do it because they, for some reason, don't like to lose money. But it's using your brain to beat a game. Okay, it's like if you and I play Monopoly together all the time, and I buy Boardwalk and Park Place, and you buy the crappy purple properties, and you lose every time, and one day you just throw the board up in the air and you say, this should be illegal. I'm just better than the casinos are at blackjack, so there shouldn't be anything illegal about that. The second thing that people will say is, are you banned from Vegas? And believe it or not, there's not someone that waits for me at the Jetway of McCarran Airport in Las Vegas and says, excuse me, Mr. Ma, you have to go home. I'm just not allowed to play blackjack there. Okay, so now, for those of you guys who've seen the movie, right, 21, you know that I'm in the movie, right? Okay, this is always one of the most disappointing moments of my life. Blank stares. I'm in the movie. I'm a dealer in the movie. I play a dealer named Jeffrey. The guy that plays me walks up to me and says, Jeffrey, my brother from another mother. We have a witty back and forth. I have like 3 lines. Is any of this ringing a bell? If any of you guys have it on DVD, you can go home. It's at about 59 minutes and 13 seconds. About. Well, now this scene, I joke, but it's funny because I now have like the SAG card and I'm like a real actor, and people always go, are you going to continue acting? I'm like, that wasn't really acting. But that scene that I filmed out there, it took 3 days to film. It's only like, 2 minutes long. I'm nominated for this new Academy Award, Best Actor in a movie that's about themselves that's in the movie for less than 5 minutes. It's a niche award, but I got a good chance to win, I think. So I'm out there filming this scene. Okay, and this scene takes 3 days to film, and the second day, the cast of the movie says, hey, Jeff, let's go get dinner together. I said, okay, that'll be fun. So we head over to dinner together, me and Lawrence Fishburne and Kate Bosworth and Kevin Spacey. On the way over to dinner, Kate Bosworth pulls me aside. Now, if you're a single guy and Kate Bosworth pulls you aside, you're pretty psyched. So she says to me, she says, Jeff, I think would be pretty fun. I said, what, Kate? And she said, I think it would be really fun to go play blackjack after dinner. And I was like, oh, that's not what I was thinking. But anyways, so Kate, I don't think that's a good idea. We're going to the Palms. They know me very well. There's no way they're going to let me play blackjack there. And she said, it's okay. You'll be with me. I'm a big star. They won't bother you. And I said, Kate, it's been a long time since Blue Crush. I don't know what a big star you are anymore. But what seemed like this horrid idea, after about 5 or 6 bottles of wine, seemed like this great idea. And after dinner, we go upstairs to the Palms Casino, the Playboy Club, which is their sort of high roller casino at the top of one of their towers. And I sit down to play blackjack with Kate Bosworth. And the floor person walks up to me and says, Jeff, what are you doing? I said, I'm here to play blackjack with Kate Bosworth, Blue Crush, big star, no big deal, right? And he says, oh, well, let me check. And he calls upstairs and he says, not only are you not allowed to play blackjack, but if your little friend Kate's at the table, you're not allowed to be within 20 feet of the table. Which was cool because that made me seem really cool to Kate, and then she went and told everyone on set the next day how cool I was. Didn't really get me anywhere with her, but that's fine. It was something. But so I'm not allowed to play blackjack. The final thing is people always say, remind me never to play poker with you. Now this is interesting because it highlights really why blackjack is this incredible game to start to understand how to make better decisions and how to make data-driven decisions. Because in blackjack, you play only against the dealer, and you know at all times how the dealer is going to act. Poker is different. You play against everyone at the table, and you have no idea how they're going to act. So if you try to model it using math and statistics, it's never going to be perfect. It's like trying to model the market. You can model it as much as possible, but then someone goes and does something irrational or people react irrationally to something, and all your models go out the window. But blackjack isn't that way. It never changes, and it's 100% perfect. Every decision you make in blackjack can be based on data, and you know it's right. So let's talk a little bit about why blackjack is beatable. Well, the first thing that you need to learn about blackjack, if any of you guys want to actually become a professional blackjack player, is learn basic strategy. And it's a great introduction to data-driven decision-making. Okay, now in my book, which we're selling in the back, hint, hint, we have this chart in the back, and it's called Basic Strategy, and it's what to do in every situation at the blackjack table. So on this chart, it says if you have, ace 2 and the dealer has a 4, you should hit. And this tells you exactly what to do. And it's been simulated out millions of times. So basically, they took a computer, they simulated what would happen if a dealer deals, and all these decisions are the right decisions definitively. So let's do a quick sort of basic rules of blackjack for those people who don't know or haven't played. You're trying to get as close to 21 as possible without going over. If you go over, you lose automatically. The dealer plays last, but they have to draw cards until they get 17 or greater. And then really you got 4 choices. You can stand, which means take no more cards. Hit, which means take another card. Double, which means double your bet and only get 1 more card, like John Starks did in the example. And surrender, which is give up right away, and you only lose half of your bet. So let's do a quick basic strategy quiz. Okay, just as a show of hands. Now you have 12, and the dealer's showing a 3. Okay, raise your hand if you think you should hit. Okay? Raise your hand if you think you should stand. Double. Okay, all of you guys, I want your names because I'm inviting you to my casino. And then raise your hand if you think you should surrender. Okay, well, the correct answer is actually you should hit. If you have 15 and the dealer has a 10, how many people think you should hit? And raise your hand. You know, this is fun, guys. Come on, you're right here. It's a Thursday night. You're hearing about gambling and business. I mean, what? So how many people think you should hit? Raise your hand. Okay? How many people think you should stand? Double. Surrender. The correct answer is surrender. And if you can't surrender, you actually should hit. So the third choice is stand, which is the most predominant choice that I saw from the crowd. And it goes to show why casinos make so much money. If you have an ace and a 7, and the dealer has a 3 showing, how many people think you should hit? Raise your hand. How about stand? How about double? And then surrender. The correct answer actually is double. Few people got it perfect here, which tells me a little bit about the school. So some notes on basic strategy. Okay, the crazy thing about basic strategy is just following it can reduce the casino's edge by about 6 times. So the average blackjack player, when the casino will model their business, they think they're going to win about 3% of the money they put on the table. But if you play perfect basic strategy, they're only going to win about 0.5% from you. So for every $100, you either can lose $3 or you can lose 50 cents. You decide what you'd rather do, just by learning that card. Okay? And you notice as we go around here that 4 times the mistakes that are made in basic strategy are made due to inaction versus action. So it's this idea of omission bias. So in the 15 versus 10 example, you guys didn't want to hit that, right? Because you don't want to make a decision that's going to force you to lose. You're basically playing not to lose, right? You're hoping that the dealer will bust, that something will happen, and you're trying to avoid the inevitable of making a decision. The same thing was true of the 12 versus the 3 that you should hit, and also of the ace-7. You just were hoping to not do anything. And this concept is something called omission bias, where in life, I'm going to talk about a bunch of these different biases that we have. And the interesting thing about them is that if you use data-driven decision-making, you can avoid these biases, right? So if you understand basic strategy, you can avoid omission bias. But omission bias really clouds our heads a lot. It's the reason in business a lot of times that people will put off making a decision, but actually by putting off making that decision, they are making a decision to not make a decision. Now, people always ask me a lot of times, how does this stuff apply to life? Is it just apply to business, or just is it apply to life? And I have a very personal story about this that happened to me recently. About 6 weeks ago, I was about to go on a speaking tour of Asia. So I went to about 7 countries in Asia in about 14 days. And on my way to more or less to go to the airport, I had a call from my father. Now, I live in San Francisco, and my father and my mother live on the East Coast. And my father had really bad news for me. My mother had just suffered a stroke. And it was a pretty bad stroke, so I had to put off my Asia trip, and I flew home to be with my family. And when I got back there, the surgeon basically the doctor was basically telling us that the stroke was so bad that when someone has a stroke, usually they have 2 choices, really just 1 choice. They usually just kind of sit back and let the blood resorb. They don't want to go and do anything evasive in someone's brain. My mom's 73. Doing brain surgery on someone 73 is a little bit risky. Okay, so as I'm sitting down there, the surgeon says, but listen, guys, this clot is so bad that we think you have a choice. You can actually make a choice to do surgery on her, to go in and drill a hole and basically take the blood clot out. And this is a very difficult decision to make, because basically you could be sending your mom to her deathbed by making the decision to have surgery. But I remember this lesson of basic strategy where we can't favor inaction over action just because it's easier. And I said to my dad, Dad, if we think that doing the surgery gives her the best chance to succeed or best chance to live, we need to do it, and we need to do it now. And he said, okay, let's do it. So they did the surgery. It was successful, very successful. My mom's well on the road to recovery, knock on wood. She's speaking and walking now and whatnot. But one of the reasons that I had so much courage to make this decision is I thought about the lessons from blackjack and how we're so inclined to favor inaction over action, but by doing that, that's a mistake. And this idea of favoring status quo, they say in the IT business, hey, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. This great story that I have from the business world is a friend of mine was actually working in Chicago in the early days of the internet, and she was doing recruiting for nurses. And she started this new job helping out this new hospital group. And what she found at that time was that they were spending about 95% of their money on traditional media, newspapers, whatever. And only 5% on internet, Craigslist, Monster.com, whichever. But yet they were getting 95% of their leads from that 5% internet spending. Okay, and she does this whole research, she looks it up, she talks to her boss, and she says, we should probably start spending more money on internet because that's where we're getting all the leads from. And her boss is like, yeah, there's no reason to change, no one's complaining yet. So just the idea of favoring status quo, there's tremendous inertia that we all need to get over. And I think that's one of my favorite sort of lessons just from basic strategy. So the second thing that you need to do after you learn basic strategy is you actually need to start and you need to learn how to count cards. Now everybody thinks that counting cards is some sort of voodoo magic that you need to be an autistic savant to do, when in reality, it's just a very basic business lesson. The best way to predict the future is to look at the past. So all that you're doing when you're counting cards is you're tracking the cards that you've seen so that you can understand what cards or predict what cards you're going to see. So the best way to understand why blackjack is beatable in this way is to compare it with some other games. Okay, so let's look at the game of roulette. Game of roulette, spin a wheel, ball goes in, red or black, blah, blah, blah. Well, one of my favorite stories, actually, from after my blackjack days were done, comes from a roulette story. So I headed out to Vegas with my friend Brian, and Brian was a big gambler. He didn't like math or any of that kind of stuff, but he says, hey, why don't you come with me to the casino and sit down next to me and just coach me to play blackjack and see if we can win some money. I said, okay, that'll be fun. He goes, we'll split the winnings. So I sit down, and we started to play blackjack. In about 2 hours, we win $2,000. So I grabbed Brian. I said, let's get out of here. It's Friday night. Let's go get some cocktails and hang out. And on the way over to the cage, all of a sudden, Brian disappears. And I'm looking around. Like, where'd Brian go? Before I can say anything, I hear, $1,000 on black. Brian's at the roulette wheel. I look over. I walk over to Brian. And as I'm walking over, I hear, red 14. Brian lost $1,000. I grab him, pull him away. He pulls back and says, another $1,000 on black. I said, Brian, what are you doing? He says, don't you see what's happening here? I said, no. And he points above him. And above him, there is a magical sign, a magical board, which shows the results of the last 20 spins of the roulette wheel. And the last 7 now have all been red. So in Brian's mind, black is due. But we all know that's not true, right? Every spin of the roulette wheel is independent. It doesn't matter if you've had 50 blacks in a row or 50 reds in a row. The chance of black or red coming up is the same every spin. Right, so I look at Brian. I say, you know that's not right. He goes, listen, I know you know math and all that probability crap, but this is roulette, this is gambling, so buzz off. I walked away. Another 3 improbable reds in a row. Brian was now down $2,000, bankrupt, and he got to learn a valuable lesson about what we call conditional probability. So craps is the same way. Dice, if you roll the dice, every time you roll the dice, it's independent. If any of you guys play craps, I'm sure you always walk up to tables and you say, how's this table been? Well, probably about the same as every table. Some 7s, some 11s. You know, they're all the same. But blackjack is different. If I take all 4 aces out of a deck of cards, hand you that deck of cards, what do you think the chance of you dealing yourself blackjack are? 0. Right? There's no aces left. So that's all counting cards is. And anyone get the fish and the elephants? Fish have no memory. Elephants have a memory. Blackjack has a memory. Elephant. You figure after doing this probably presentation a couple hundred times in my life and only one group actually understanding that I might edit the slide. But I hope one day that people will all get it. So what is counting cards? Well, there was actually a professor at that time who was at UCLA and then went on to MIT. And what he did is he did simulations on the game of blackjack. And what he found is that when there's a lot of low cards left in the deck, i.e. you've seen a lot of high cards, it's bad for the player. When there's a lot of high cards left in the deck, i.e. you've seen a lot of low cards, it's good for the player. So all you do is track the high cards to low cards you've seen, and then you can understand what your odds of winning are. When your odds of winning are higher, you bet more. When your odds of winning are lower, you bet less. And that's really all card counting is. It's pretty simple. There's some more complicated stuff that actually goes on here, but this is a hard one to teach in a big setting. Basically, people ask, how do you count into multiple decks? Well, when there's multiple decks, you just adjust for how many decks are remaining. So these places where they use continuous shufflers, if they're using a continuous shuffler, it means that there's an infinite amount of decks remaining so that you have no advantage. So that's one of the ways they stop card counters. So I have a little game for you guys. Okay? I want everyone to participate in this game. I flew all the way from San Francisco. I want you guys all to participate. In game one, I'm going to flip a coin once and only once. If it's heads, I'm going to give you $100,000. And I got it in my bag over there. But I also got a couple big guys back there for if you don't pay. And if it's tails, you pay me $90,000. We'll only play once, though. I'll play each of you guys just once. How many of you guys want to play that game? One. The guy that got all the basic strategy questions correct wants to play. 2, 3. It's only a handful of you guys. Okay. My second game. Now I'm going to play this game with you guys. Now I have an infinite amount of money back there, and so do you guys. We get to play this game as many times as you want. How many of you guys now want to play this game? Okay, everybody should be ready. Dean of the business school, you should want to play this game. It's free money, right? Every time I'm handing you $10,000. So this really highlights an interesting part of blackjack and sort of one of the things that I like to talk about and what we did. What we did was not gambling. Okay, the first example, that game is gambling. Because there's risk, there's tons of uncertainty, and even though you have a small advantage, it's still gambling. But in blackjack, the second example, our blackjack was like that second example. We tried to take the risk out of gambling, right? By doing that game millions of times, or obviously you couldn't do it infinite, but let's say you could do it 100 times, you'd feel pretty confident that you'd end up on top. Well, in blackjack, we had a small advantage. We could get a small advantage at the casino. And then through money management, through asset allocation, we made sure that we were able to make the decision and take the risk out of the gambling. So imagine that you played that game with me, and after the first 10 times, they were all heads, and you were down $900,000. Would you guys quit? No. You shouldn't. I mean, if you do, you're a fool, because you still have an advantage. And it doesn't matter what happened recently. Just like in blackjack, if we lose a bunch of hands in a row, it doesn't all of a sudden mean our strategy doesn't work. We stick with our strategy and we keep going with it. You sort of bet independent of your recent results. And then important is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Give yourself a chance to make the decision a million times, right? So if I gave you the choice of, hey, you could play this game for $100,000, you can either play it once for $100,000 versus $90,000, or you could play it 100,000 times for $1. You'd much rather play it 100,000 times for $1, right? Because there's a much greater chance that you're going to end up on top. So that money management strategy was very important to what we did in blackjack. But even more important, were some of the non-analytical business lessons that we had. So people always ask me, what was the most important thing that you looked for when you recruited a new player to play blackjack? And they expect me to say, good at math, can do derivatives in their head. No. Imagine you're going to find and pick one person in this room to hand $100,000 in cash to and tell them to win you lots of money in Vegas. The first thing you care about is whether you trust that person. And at the core, that's the most important thing about people you work with, people you recruit, people you invest in. I was telling this to a friend of mine who's a very successful venture capital guy. He put some of the first money in Google and eBay and whatnot. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, you're right. When I talk to a new entrepreneur, for the first 5 minutes, I'm not even listening to what they're saying. I'm just trying to figure out, can I trust them? And that level of trust goes even beyond just sort of trust in someone's integrity. You also have to trust people to do their job effectively. And this is this idea of teamwork. Okay, so imagine that we are in a casino, right, and we have this whole situation where we work as a team, right? Because I could go in and play myself and make a little bit of money, or I could go in with the team, and the team is like 4 spotters is what we call them, and they go to all different tables, and they play the table minimum, where they stand behind the table, and when the table gets good, they call us over with a signal. So we use signals like arms folded behind your back, or arms, like things you see people doing in casinos all the time. And then you walk over, and we use a code word to pass the number off. So we had a word for every number. So our word for 16 was sweet. But you don't turn to the guy and say, oh, the count's sweet. You actually have to look at the dealer or someone else at the table, and you say the word out because you don't want the cameras catching you talking to that person. So oftentimes we have to be very clandestine in how we do this and very innovative. And my friend Neil, I was playing with once, was terrible at this. He would always get performance anxiety anytime I walked up to the table and would not know what to do with the word. So oftentimes he would just blurt the word out as loud as he could. Rather than asking the dealer, hey, is there a place you know where I can get some sweets? He would be like, just freak out. So this one time I walk up to the table, he's calling me in, and he's playing at the table, and I think he made a decision that when the dealer gave him his card, no matter what he got, he was going to say, sweet, celebrating. So he had a 12, dealer gives him a 10, he goes, sweet! The problem was he lost. But his sweet was so convincing that the dealer thought he won and paid him. Now, the bottom line, so if that's trust and teamwork, so back to trust and teamwork, the important thing, again, okay, on this trust and teamwork aspect is something that I think about a lot in my world as an entrepreneur. So I've started companies where you start off alone, and I equate that to being like the lone card counter, walking into a casino, being alone. But then I'm only so successful if alone. So I need to start hiring people around me, spotters around me. But if I don't trust them to do their job effectively, I can't grow my organization. So if I go and I sit down at the spotter and I don't trust the count he's giving me, then I can't effectively utilize his skills. And it's the same way as an entrepreneur. I don't micromanage anyone. I let them do their job because otherwise I'm not able to grow my organization. So you have to trust the people you work with to do their job, to have integrity, and otherwise you won't be able to grow. Okay, the top is trust and teamwork. What's the bottom line? I expect someone in this crowd to be able to get this. Common goal setting. Close. Very good. Very good. Common goal setting. And common goals as this whole team aspect is so important, right? When you think about your organization, you think about, whatever it is, your team, if you're on a sports team, if you think about your group, your study group, you need to make sure that you guys are all on the same page and you have very common goals, and those common goals are as transparent as our common goals were. We had a large pile of cash and chips that we wanted to grow into a larger pile of cash and chips. And that's how transparent our goals were. Okay, so a great example of this is because we had these common goals, we had great competition amongst all of us, but it was great competition because we wanted the other people to succeed, because when they did, we did. So one of my favorite stories was from our biggest weekend ever. At the end of the weekend, I knew that we needed to win about $50,000 to sort of reach our win goal for the weekend. So I went down to the Mirage Casino, grinded it out, won about $57,000, was very proud of myself, went to bed in the Mirage, and woke up to a big thud on my head. And I looked up, it was my friend Wes. And I said, Wes, I went down and played, and I won. And he said, oh, that's great. How much did you win? I said, I won $57,000. And then I looked at him, and I said, wait, did you play also? And he said, yeah, I played. And I go, oh, how'd you do? He goes, I did all right. I won $157,000. And it's all sitting on your head right now. He had it in a pillowcase, cash and chips, and he was bouncing it on my head. And that was the big thud. But so I wasn't unhappy. Even though he had beat me, I was happy because we were all on the same page. We all had the common goals. What's actually even funnier from that weekend is at the end of a weekend, one, we didn't really use banks for this kind of money. You can't really, it's hard to go in and out. I mean, maybe at the Greater Iowa Credit Union, they'll let you cash in hundreds of thousands of dollars, but most banks, they don't let you do that. So I walk in at the end of the weekend, it was our biggest weekend ever. And Wes and I were alone at the end of the weekend, and we were just kind of chilling out at the Mirage pool. We had all the money that we had left, so the money we'd won and the money we'd brought out there, in this ratty duffel bag. And it was sitting underneath the lawn chair at the Mirage pool. And it was about 110 degrees in Vegas. It was August. And I turned to Wes and I said, Wes, can we maybe just go for a swim and just leave the bag here? No one knows what's in it. And he says, well, how much is in there? And I said, well, it's the money we won, which is about $450,000. And the money we brought out here, which is about $540,000. So it's about $990,000. Wes, do you think we can just leave it here? I said, I don't see why not. It's not like it's $1 million. So, okay, so blackjack, true or false? You show us sit as far to the left as possible so you see more cards. Who thinks that's true? Wow, no one thinks that's true? It's false. Okay. When the other people at your table don't follow basic strategy, i.e., don't follow the rules, you will lose more often. Who thinks that's true? That is a pretty smart crowd, except for these guys. But School of Business, right? MBA? Yeah, there you go. He was at dinner with me. I'm just teasing him. So, no, now this is actually a great one because, and let me explain the scenario. I mean, I picked on him, but I bet more of you guys, when you're in a casino and someone does something dumb at your table, that you get annoyed at them. Okay, so this is the example. You have 15, the guy next to you, the idiot next to you has 15 also, and the dealer has a 6 up. Okay, you stand your 15 because 15 against a 6 is a stand. The guy next to you hits, and you go, no. He says, no, I really want to hit it. He hits it. Okay, he gets a 10 and busts. The dealer flips over 10, has 16, takes a hit, gets a 5 to make 11, 21, and you lose. Everyone loses. If this idiot over here had just stood like he was supposed to, okay, everyone would have won. Right? He would have even won. But here's the problem. He very well could have hit and taken a 5 to make 20, and then the dealer would have taken a 10 and busted. That's what could have happened. But as individuals, we never remember that. We only remember the time the idiot next to us hit and it cost us money. And that's something that we call confirmation bias. Because we're more inclined, as human beings, unfortunately, we're much more inclined to believe or remember details that support a theory we have already. So your theory is this idiot's about to cost you money, and you only remember the times that he does something. So I think that happens a lot in business. And when we think about a guy that used to run Enron, right? Jeff Skilling. He's the CEO of Enron, responsible for one of the biggest corporate fiascos in the world. And one of the things that they talk about with Skilling was that he fell for confirmation bias all the time because he would fire people that worked for him, or he would marginalize them if they said anything against him or said anything that disagreed with him. He always wanted to have himself around yes men around him. And the problem is then he only sees details that support his theory, so he never sees the opposite side and doesn't really get to make good decisions. So watch out for confirmation bias. Now, the last blackjack, true or false, if you have 20, you should always stand. Who thinks that's true? I want to see what you say. Who thinks it's false? Okay, if you're not counting cards, which none of you guys are, I'm sure, or a few of you are, you should never do anything but stand 20. Because 20 is a winning hand, 20, But imagine this. Imagine you have a pair of 10s, and the dealer has a 6 up. We already talked about what card counting is, right? It's knowledge of the high cards to low cards that remain. And let's say that you have the knowledge that almost every card that you haven't seen at this point is a 10, a face card, or an ace. You have a pair of 10s, and the dealer has a 6. Wouldn't you want to then split those 10s because you have a greater chance to make more money? Is that everyone following me here? Do we need a chalkboard to write this down? Okay, well, let me explain it, tell you guys a story. So this is my, there we go. For those of you guys who didn't really believe I was the dealer, that's me, Jeffrey the dealer. And what's great about this is that they literally had a walk on a set, like my first day on set. I'm so excited. I'm in Vegas. They're filming. I have a dressing room. Go to wardrobe. I do makeup in the morning, and I walk on a set, and I'm like, I'm here. And they go, okay, here's your prop. Here's your name tags. They put my name tag on, and my name tag, I'm the dealer named Jeffrey, and they spelled Jeffrey incorrectly. So I look at them, and I say, hey, my name's it's spelled incorrectly here. It's actually Jeffrey. And the woman's like, sorry, we can't. This is too expensive. It's a piece of plastic. You can't get me another one? This movie's going to make millions of dollars. The movie made $150 million on a $35 million budget. And they couldn't get me a new piece of plastic. That's how respected I am in the acting world. So anyways, but I always have this up here to remind me of the most difficult decision that I ever had to make in a casino. Okay, so I walk up to a table, and the math is the MGM Grand. The math calls for me to bet two hands of $8,000. Okay, so the dealer deals me blackjack and then a pair of tens, and the dealer has a 6-up. So the blackjack, it's clear what I do, right? I get paid on that. I stand that. I get $12,000. The pair of tens is this splitting hand, and I had just learned this sort of new thing where if you're counting cards, there are times when the count is very high, when you know there's a lot of tens and face cards and aces, that you actually split these tens. Okay? And I look at it, and I do the math in my head. I know it's not even close. I should definitely split these tens. And I go to stop the dealer, and I go, I think I'm going to split these tens. And she goes, you're going to what? I say, I just think I'm going to split these tens. And then I started thinking about this. Why is this such a hard decision for me to make, even though I know it is 100% the right decision? And the first reason is because of something called groupthink. So everyone who's sitting at that table thinks I should stand this 20, be happy with my $8,000 win, and not get greedy. And if I split these tens, I am a greedy punk who deserves to lose. But I have knowledge that they don't have. So I can't do what they want me to do because they're actually wrong. But there's tremendous inertia that we all have to do what people want us to do, especially in a group environment where they think they're going to be influenced by my decision. So overcoming groupthink was an important thing for me to do at this point. The second reason that I didn't want to split these tens is something called loss aversion. In life, we have a bias where we are all more, we don't like to lose. We're more averse to losing than we are to winning the same amount. Like we get more pain out of losing, so we want to avoid losing. And it's horrible because it colors our judgment. So here I am, I have 20, and I'm thinking, gosh, I have 20. I've already banked that $8,000 as a win. I don't want to give up that $8,000 that I've already won. Well, the problem is, it's a bad way to look at it. If I have an opportunity to make more money by doing something else, then I have to do that. Okay, I live in Silicon Valley, and all my friends, we think we know the tech stocks pretty well. So a few years ago when Apple was trading at 60, my friends and I, we all said, we got to buy Apple. So we did. We bought Apple. Apple went from 60 to 120 pretty quickly. My friends said, hey, we should probably sell Apple now. I mean, we just made 100%. We don't want to lose any of that money. We want a profit take. Well, how do you think they feel now that Apple's at 300? Okay, the decision to buy or sell Apple should have nothing to do with whether you own it. It should have to do with whether you think it's a good buy or not at 120. Ultimately, what is your money better put somewhere else, or do you think Apple's the right place? You shouldn't just be afraid of losing that 120 you already gained. So the ability to make decisions ultimately from a true zero frame of reference is really important. So I decided to split the tens, put another $8,000 down. The dealer gave me an ace on the first one to make 21, and a 9 on the second one to make 19. The dealer flipped a 10 to make 16, and then gathered another 10 to make 26, went over. I won both hands. I won $16,000 plus $12,000, $28,000, walked away from the table because everyone at the table wanted to kill me there. And as I'm walking away, I'm saying, $28,000 is a lot better than $20,000, which is what I would have made if I hadn't split those tens. So let's recap my key learnings from blackjack. One, this idea, realized decisions are everywhere. A decision to maintain status quo is still a decision. Another personal example that I have from this, and I'm sure many of you guys know people in this situation, hopefully no one is in this room is currently in this situation, but you know those people that are in those dead-end relationships? And every day they decide, it's just easier this way. We're not going to break up. Or I'm not going to break up with her. I'm not going to break up with him. Because it's just easier not to make that decision. But every day that they decide not to make that decision is a decision to stay with this person. And they're making the wrong decision because it's easier. So realize decisions are everywhere. A decision to maintain status quo is still a decision. Evaluate decisions from a true zero frame of reference. What will help you win the most? Don't worry about what will prevent you from losing the most. Think about what will help you win the most. Imagine you're able to make the decision millions of times. So in our example of the flipping the coin, whatever, it's much easier to make the decision right if you're able to make it a million times. And also make sure you put yourself into a position to make that decision millions of times. And now this is my favorite one, and it's one of the hardest ones for people to understand, is not to confuse the outcome with the decision. A bad outcome does not equal a bad decision, always. And a good decision does not always equal a good result. Now, there's a couple examples I have of this. One, a friend of mine works for a big hedge fund in San Francisco, and his boss is an idiot. And one day he goes, you know what an idiot my boss is? And I said, what? He goes, yesterday he tried to buy Google and add it to the portfolio because he thought, hey, this is a good value right now. So he went to buy it. And then halfway through the day, I noticed that he hadn't bought Google. He typed the ticker symbol in incorrectly, and he bought something else. But the fortunate thing was that company was a rumored takeover bid that day and had gone up about 50%. And I turned to him and I told him, and I said, hey, we kind of messed this up. And he goes, we didn't mess it up. It ended up okay, so it was a good decision because it was a good result. But we all know that's not true. Now, the other example of this is now, my friends always go say, hey, let's go play blackjack. So we go to blackjack, the casinos, and what that normally means is I stand behind the table and drink a beer while they play blackjack, and they ask me what to do in every situation. They're like, hey, I got 15, the dealer has a 10. I got 15. So they'll say, hey, I got 15, dealer has a 9. What should I do? Well, there's only one right answer, right? The right answer, 15 against a 9, is to hit. Okay? So I say hit. If they get a 6, I am a genius. If they get a 7 and bust, I'm an idiot, a moron. They never should have made a movie or book about me. All right? But the decision was still that decision. It was always the right decision regardless of the result. And then we talked about building and managing a strong team. So let's go back to my big lesson. I'm sure you guys have all been wanting to know how this turned out. So here I am, got the woman behind me squawking about her cardboard box in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. I've just lost $50,000, and I have another $50,000 on the table. I'm 21 years old. I'm at Caesar's Palace. I have 19, 19, 19 against the dealer's 5. The dealer flips a 10 to make 15, and then gets a 6 to make 21. So I lose $50,000. I'm starting to think to myself, this math thing sucks. So I remember I went upstairs to my room at Caesar's Palace, and I collapsed on the floor, stared up at the ceiling, and wondered to myself, why is there a mirror up there? But once I got over that, I'm 21. I don't know why there's a mirror up there. I'm like, do people lie in bed and get ready? What is going on? So here I am, okay, just lost all this money and really like contemplating sort of like my own personal ethos or existence or how or what this even means. And I thought about those 4 lessons in terms of how to help me make this decision. I thought about, quitting was the easy thing, but it was really a decision to quit. It wasn't just avoiding a decision to play. It was a decision to quit. I can't do that. I thought about from a true zero frame of reference, sure, quitting will prevent me from losing any more money, but I certainly won't win any more money. So I can't just quit because of that reason. If I could go back and do this millions of times, or if I need to put myself in a place to do this millions of times, I got to go back down and play. And then finally, had I made the right decision and just suffered a poor outcome, or had I made the wrong decision and had a bad outcome? Well, I'd made the right decision, and I did the math all out in my head, and absolutely. So I went back down and I kept playing. Over the next 2 days, I won back $100,000. Okay, and then the last day I was there, I won an additional $70,000. So for the weekend, I ended up $70,000. Okay, and if I had quit, which is what I wanted to do, I never would have had a movie made about me, I never would have a book made about me, and I never would have come to Ames, Iowa to come talk to you guys. So, all right, thanks for the time. Do we have questions? I could tell you if I could see. Sure, from the front.
How long did it take the Las Vegas casino community to realize that they were dealing with a serious card counter?
Well, I mean, the notion of card counting is something that people have known about for a long time. So it's not like we invented card counting, right? But it took them about 7 years to kind of kick me out personally. And that was just because there's a lot that goes into card counting that has nothing to do with math. You have to try to convince them that you're not a card counter. You have to play it off. You have to act like you're rich. You have to, do whatever it is. But there's a lot of sort of cloak and dagger aspect to it. But it took them about 7 years before they caught on to me specifically. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, did we all play by the rules? And yeah, we did. I mean, no real card counter purposely loses money, right? I mean, it's just that your margin is so small that if you purposely lose money, you're giving up some of that margin, and you never would do that. Back in the back? The question was, did we ever wear disguises like in the movies? Yeah, we did. We tried to do different things to sort of disguise our appearance and, grow facial hair or dress differently, or, we all use like pseudonyms and stuff like that. And people used to have a lot of fun with the pseudonyms. One of the guys went with the name Winslow Lee. So think about that for a sec. Winslow Lee. Win slowly. So, anyways, yes. No, I mean, I don't really play blackjack anymore, and the biggest reason is that people know who I am to some degree, and it's just like this cat and mouse game that I don't even really want to deal with. Like if I get found playing blackjack, especially outside the U.S., like I just did a speaking tour of the Middle East and of Asia, and in every place they were always like, let's go play blackjack, and I'm just like, I don't really want to get thrown in some weird prison in Sri Lanka. So, which is where I was. So, but no, I don't really play blackjack anymore. Yeah. Yes.
Part of the assumption here is that you're putting yourself in a position to play the game a million times. How much of a bankroll do you have to start off?
Yeah, it's a good question. A big bankroll. So, I mean, one of the things behind it, and if you think about our example of flipping a coin. If you're flipping that coin, let's say that I gave you a third game, which is that we can play for as much money. We can play for, $100 versus $90, right? That game, the flipping coin game. But we're only going to play for as much money even in your pocket. How much money would you want to have in your pocket where you would feel comfortable playing that game? That's sort of the equation we did, right? Which is we have a small edge of the casino. We don't want to make any bet too big so that if we get unlucky, like I did in that $100,000 hand, that we'll lose. So there's an equation for it, but roughly speaking, you need like 100 bets to do it.
In order to get started, that's sort of the minimum threshold.
Yep.
So then sort of estimate what the margin is on each play.
2%.
And then.
So in other words, you need to bet about $50 million to win $1 million.
Okay.
So it's hard work. Other questions? Yeah. I don't understand what you mean about losing. Well, in blackjack, you have a small edge over the casino, right? So you are going to lose sometimes. You don't have to lose, though. I mean, there's no rule that says you have to lose, but you're going to lose. And I think it's just the same thing in business. There's going to be times in business where you make decisions that don't work out, and it's how you bounce back from those decisions that really defines who you are. All right, let's do one more question, and then we'll do. We're going to do the book signing. Is that right? So book signing and reception. And really, so everything I talk about in my speech is all expanded upon more within my book. So hopefully you'll buy it. Yeah, last question. I can't, can you speak up? Sorry. Yeah, only about 2% edge. So the best that, there'll be hands where we might have, on any individual hand, we might have maybe a 5, maybe a 6% edge over the casino. But in general, the edge that we had over the casino was only about 2%. So, okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming. And there will be our book signing ceremony and also reception. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thanks.